Young adult fiction is a booming industry. The genre has produced hits like The Hunger Games, the Divergent series, as well as John Green's The Fault in Our Stars, and the Angie Thomas book, The Hate You Give. One thing that all of these books have in common is that they tackle big issues between their covers. Between dystopian futures where people are forced into violent circumstances and tales of teens facing uncertain futures because of cancer or police brutality, YA has become a genre defined by hardship and lack of control.
For a lot of young people, this is the reality of the world for them. I think that as young adults, you grow up in a world where you actually have very little control over your lives.
That's Marie Lu, author of the Warcross duology books titled Warcross and Wildcard.
Think about what life was like in high school. It's a very regimented, strict thing. You've got 6 minutes to get to your classes. You have no control over your homework. You have very little control over all the things that are happening in your life, but you're growing up and you're changing, and everything around you is changing as well. And a lot of young adults, especially in this day and age, grow up seeing, online, social media, and in real life, the real violence that happens in the world around them. And I think it does a disservice to young people to pretend that doesn't exist. So I think it's important in young adult fiction to address those things in a thoughtful and mature way for young people to identify with, to say, hey, I see you. I understand the hardships that you're facing in the real world, the challenges that you're going through as you grow up to become an adult, and how to face that.
Lu's Warcross books are more in that science fiction futuristic vein of YA fiction. Her books tell the story of a young hacker who lives in a society obsessed with a game called Warcross. She's hired to help uncover a security flaw in the game and is thrown into the midst of a world of corruption and greed. Lu says she has always been attracted to science fiction and fantasy worlds for the way they allow you to navigate a heightened reality.
I've always loved fantasy and science fiction since I was a kid. My first fantasy series that I ever read was actually Brian Jacques' Redwall series in middle school, and I remember just being obsessed with that series. And ever since then, I've read almost exclusively fantasy and science fiction. So I always knew I was going to write in those genres. It's what I feel very comfortable in. It's what I'm familiar with. And I like being able to explore things about our society through the exaggerated lenses of fantasy and science fiction. And in Warcross's case, since the book revolves around a technology that's just taken the world by storm, it gave me a chance to explore some of my own thoughts and questions about how technology is moving forward in our society and how quickly it's happening. So it just is a genre that really appeals and fascinates to me.
And though your idea of YA may be that it's all dystopias and melodrama, Lu says she actually appreciates how the genre flips some of those expectations on their head and can make an uplifting story out of a dystopian premise.
The thing I really love about young adult is that it's a very optimistic category. And even though a lot of our stories have a lot of darkness and violence in them, just as the real world has, it also depicts young people at the forefront of changing their societies for the better and being that silver lining in a relatively dark world, which is what our reality is.
Lu also says that she hopes her books can be enjoyed by readers of all ages, because actually, that was who they were written for.
I didn't actually set out to write for the young adult category because I didn't really know that it was a thing when I first started pitching my books. I think I started writing for young people mostly because in fantasy and science fiction, at least when I was growing up reading them, a lot of the main characters are young by default. So if you go back and kind of look at the old fantasy series like Terry Brooks and David Eddings' work and that sort of thing, they all kind of star young people in their teens. So I think that's what I was trained on. And later on, when I pitched my first series, Legend, to my agent, she was the one who told me that it was young adult. And at that point, that's when I discovered the entire category, and I've loved it ever since.
Ellen Hopkins is another young adult author, but her books are that other prominent style of YA, which is realistic stories about young people facing real-life adversity. Her books have been both taught in schools and banned in schools because she isn't afraid to confront hot-button issues, like drug addiction and teen pregnancy. She's most well known for her book Crank, but has written 17 books in total. Her latest is called People Kill People, and it tackles the highly polarizing topic of gun violence in America. Hopkins says she's enjoyed watching the entire YA category grow over the past 15 years since her career took off.
Truly, there was no real young adult was considered more like what now we would call middle grade, so for younger kids, and then they kind of just went straight to adult literature after that. But we've created this space for young adult readers, teens, older teens, that where they can experience some of this stuff without actually having to experience it, where they can learn about ways to get out of these situations, ways to use their voices. So I think it's become a really important space for young people who do experience these things every single day. I know a lot of adults don't like to think that maybe their teens are going through these things, but they are. You know, they're in every school, they're in the back seats of cars, they're on the school bus, they're kids. This is what they deal with daily.
Not only has Hopkins dedicated her career to writing for young people, but she spent much of her life raising them too, which she says has given her a real sense of what our children have been going through for the past few decades.
I'm raising now my third generation of kids. So like I have way adult kids, I have a 21-year-old, and I am raising grandchildren. We've had them for 5 years. So full-time, watching these kids' lives change in that my oldest kids, there was never, ever the worry that someone would go into their school with a gun. It was not even considered. With the 21-year-old, it was just starting to become kind of in the news at that time. And now our children are dealing with, lockdown drills and, learning where they're going to hide if a gun comes on their campuses and stuff. So I think this conversation is vital, that we find ways to at least mitigate as much as possible, not just school shootings, but mass shootings, but gun violence overall.
Hopkins says part of what leads young people to flock to these books is that stories can provide them a place to practice reacting to these larger issues and work through what their exact beliefs are.
The fictional space is often the safer space to explore, not just gun violence, but a lot of these issues that our kids are dealing with every single day. And to create characters that can be representative without having to be look that person in the eye, I guess. I think it is a more comfortable place, jumping off point for the conversation. And I hope that's what happens with this. I hope people talk about the characters, to think about, because each of these characters, there are 6, they all have a reason to maybe pick up a gun. And these are things that affect all of us: revenge, jealousy, anger, hate, thoughts of suicide. These are things that lots of us experience. So to find in these characters and to be able to go, it's not me, it's not you, it's them, but we can talk there.
Both Lou and Hopkins say that young adult fiction allows young people a way in on considering big topics and figuring out what decisions they want to make in their lives.
You can't hide the truth from our kids or from anybody, but our kids deserve to be, I like to call it, being armed with knowledge. The more you know, the safer you're going to be, because you're going to realize that there are outcomes to choices, that you're going to be able to be forewarned with, okay, that's a problem. I can see maybe that kid over there needs some help.
I hope that young people step away from my books with some sense of optimism and control and awareness of the world around them. Again, I feel like young people, especially based on how I felt when I was growing up, I felt like I had very little control over the things in my life. And one of the beautiful things about young adult is that it shows that young people have a lot of agency and a lot of power. And it's been really heartening to see young people in the real world making huge waves, making differences, making change on their own and taking action on issues that are huge that most adults would be afraid to tackle.
Marie Lou's War-Cross duology and Ellen Hopkins' book People Kill People are available now. For more information on all of our guests, visit our site, viewpointsonline.net. You can find an archive of past programs there and on iTunes and Stitcher. I'm Gary Price.
The burden of Alzheimer's disease on the nation's families and economy is growing rapidly. The Alzheimer's Association 2019 Alzheimer's Disease Facts and Figures report finds that an estimated 5.8 million Americans are living with Alzheimer's dementia, and 1 in 3 seniors will die from it. More than 16 million Americans are caring for a person with the disease. Dr. Keith Fargo is Director of Scientific Programs and Outreach at the Alzheimer's Association.
Alzheimer's is now the 6th leading cause of death in the U.S., and by 2050, the number of Americans with Alzheimer's is going to climb to almost 14 million. This burden to the country and to families is unsustainable, and it's critical that we continue to invest in Alzheimer's research to reverse this trend.
Fargo says in 2019, Alzheimer's disease will cost the country $290 billion. And without scientific advancements, that figure will top $1 trillion by mid-century. Learn more about the impact of Alzheimer's disease at alz.org.
Trying to sell your old car? Instead, donate your vehicle to Heritage for the Blind. Pickup is free and your donation is tax-deductible. Just call 1-800-835-1478. Heritage for the Blind accepts cars, vans, trucks, and boats, whether they run or not. Donate your vehicle and you'll receive a free 3-day vacation voucher to over 50 locations. Call 1-800-835-1478. That's 1-800-835-1478.
If you or someone you know is struggling with addiction, please call this toll-free number right now, 800-279-0419. That's 800-279-0419. By calling your addiction team, you're taking the first steps to recovery. Don't fight addiction alone. Their advisors are ready to take your call. Your future is still a bright place. The help you need could be one call away. 800-279-0419. That's 800-279-0419. This call is completely confidential, and if you have private insurance, there could be little to no cost to you. Even if you've already been to treatment, give us a call. There's no need to let addiction ruin your life. Take the first step now. Call your addiction team at 800-279-0419. That's 800-279-0419. Make the free call now. 800-279-0419. Your addiction team is a third-party advertiser for various treatment centers and placement networks. Individual results will vary. Visit youraddictionteam.com/terms for more information.
And that's Viewpoints for this week. Viewpoints is a production of Media Tracks Communications. You can follow us on Twitter and Facebook to learn about upcoming shows and find a library of past programs on iTunes. Plus, you'll always find podcasts of our segments and information about our guests at viewpointsonline.net. Join us again next week for your public affairs magazine, Viewpoints.